Hello and welcome to ACT Prep. I am your English teacher, Miss Abear. I am both English and reading certified for ACT Prep, and I hope that you find these lessons engaging and helpful in your pursuit of the best score possible for the English portion of the ACT. So, Unit 1 is going to cover the basics. We're going to look at kind of the structure of the test. We're going to take a practice test, and we're going to review the answers and the best answers. ACT does not call these the correct answers. They call them the best answers because if you are familiar with the English language, it is very fluid and language changes over time. And you may encounter an answer that is, or a response that two of them may be correct, but one is the better or the best answer out of the ones provided for you. So we'll talk about that and we'll dig in during Unit 1. And then in Unit 2, we'll go into a little bit more detail specific to each of the skills that you need in order to find success on the English portion of the ACT. So today we're going to start with Lesson 1, and Lesson 1 is all about just the introduction to the test. What does it look like and what is it about? And so let's start. The purpose of the ACT is to measure essential skills and the knowledge that you need in order to become ready for college and careers and to predict your success in college. Now, college may not be where you want to go. And a lot of people think college is some type of, I've got to do 4 years and I've got to take all these prerequisites and I've got to do all of these things. But that's not necessarily what college is anymore. It used to be that only, but now college is so much more. College is preparing you for different careers. It could be a technical career. It could be one where you start as with a certificate program through a college or university, and then you can pursue kind of different paths and eventually move up to your bachelor's degree or your master's or even your doctoral degree. It just depends on what your pursuit is and what your plans are. But the ACT also will predict how you will do in the real world, what they call it, in a career. And so ACT is more than just what most people will think is just college prep, because it's much more than that. So I hope that your teacher in your classroom has helped you kind of make those connections. Also, you may be in a class called College and Career Readiness, and that course will kind of dig deep for you and tell you what scores you need on your ACT in order to get free college. And guys, let me just tell you, free is my favorite 4-letter F word. It is the essentials of, if you want something, why not get it for free if you can and not have to go into debt? And that is what this ACT prep course is all about, keeping you out of debt so that you can pursue your dreams. So, the ACT does measure skills that are necessary for success in college, especially those that will be used in those entry-level college courses. And that could be the technical side or the deeper side, which would be your Comp 1, your literature courses for English section of the ACT, or your biology and Algebra 1 for your other ACT prep classes that come. So it just depends on which way you're going to pursue, but these courses will help you determine, or your score on the ACT will help predict your success in those courses, and it does prepare you for those skills. So what does the ACT test look like on the English side? The English test is the very first test that you will take. It's that very first section. You have 45 minutes to complete 75 items. Whew, that's a lot, but it's doable. There are 5 essays. Some people call them passages. There are about 14 to 16 multiple choice questions per passage, and then you see the reporting categories: conventions of standard English, knowledge of language, and production of writing. So at 75 items in 45 minutes, you have less than 1 minute, obviously. You have a little bit more than 30 seconds per item. Don't let that get you in your feelings. Do not let that scare you, because it's doable if you are prepared. So let's look a little bit further into those reporting categories or skills that the ACT English portion measures. Under conventions of standard English, you have sentence structure, usage, and punctuation. Notice that conventions of standard English covers 39 to 41 items. That means it's more than 50% of the test. So when you're looking at punctuation and your teacher is grading your essays and they're counting all this punctuation, that's half of this English test. Then you have production of writing. That's about 30% of your test, which is topic development and organization. Lastly, you have this idea of knowledge of language. Can you express your ideas clearly, and stylistically, what kind of choices are the best choices? And we'll delve deeper into those next week. But that's only about 15% of the test. So when your teacher pushes you for your punctuation, for your usage, for your sentence structure, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in our third week about what does that mean of sentence structure, but I'll give you a little hint. It has something to do with run-on sentences and fragments and some of those other things. So I know you have seen your teacher write that in your margins of your essays. So when your teacher is doing that, he or she is helping you get prepared for this ACT and for life. So let's look at the conventions of standard English a little bit deeper. The conventions of standard English test the following knowledge and skills. Determine when to use punctuation marks, including periods, colons, semicolons, dashes, and parentheses. Determine when to use subordinating and coordinating conjunctions to join clauses or revise awkward sounding fragments or fused sentences. Use logical verbs, tenses in contexts. Recognize and correct disturbances in sentence structure, such as faulty placement of adjectives, participle phrases, missing or incorrect pronouns, dangling or misplaced modifiers, all of those things. Maintain consistent and logical verb, tense, and voice, and personal pronouns within a paragraph or passage. Guys, that's a lot, but conventions of standard English, again, that is the biggest part of this English portion of the ACT test. It is more than 50%. So again, that's a lot of information, but all of those skills have been building since you were in the first or second grade, with the spelling, with the verb tenses. All of those things build on each other, and if you have been a good student throughout this time, then you should have no problem scoring a 36 on the English portion of the ACT. But if you don't find that as a priority, or you have not found that as a priority, then you may be struggling now and you need a little help. And the second part of, actually we're going to start third week, and then into the Unit 2 will help you with those skills. I'll kind of break those down and show you some of build those skills that you need. All right, so then let's look at production of writing. What does that cover and what does that mean? It looks at that topic development in terms of purpose and focus. When you write an essay and your teacher is asking you to maintain your focus, that means that he or she doesn't want you straying in every direction. Maintain that focus so that your reader can follow your ideas. And then you want to look at organization, unity, and cohesion. Cohesion should be a word that your teacher has been using since the first day you started writing in his or her classroom, because that is part of our state standards. That cohesion is writing an essay that it all fits together. You could take this sentence out and move it somewhere else. Not good organization, but it's still, the reader still understands that it's part of the essay. It's just where to move it for it to have the best placement in that essay. So when you have a cohesive essay, all of the sentences, all of the words fit in just the right places. And then the last section, and I've given you 2 slides for it. We're going to start with this slide. Production of writing is the smallest section, but it covers the most. This is where they're going to ask you only about 20% of the test is going to be this production of writing, but it's all of this knowledge that you have to have in order to score that 36 on the on the ACT. And so we need to make sure that you have these skills. The skills for the conventions of standard English will get you a really good score, but really understanding that production of writing will help you. And if you've taken any of my English courses, and these are the English course is part of the MPB Learning playlist, you will see that every unit that we do in that English course, there's an essay. And when we write an essay, we always do a peer review, and then we do our own edits, and then we submit our essays. That is that production of writing. When you are confident in those skills, then it's easier for you to edit someone else's paper or kind of give them ideas to edit their papers and even edit your own. So let's take a look at production of writing and those skills. They want you to be able to determine the relevance of materials to a topic or the focus of the passage or paragraph. Identify the purpose of a word or phrase. So that's really important. Just every word matters in an essay. Use words, phrases, sentences to accomplish a specific purpose. So everything needs to be purposeful. And then we go into some additional skills. You need to be able to determine the need for transition words or phrases to define relationships in terms of time or logic. Those things are important. Determine the most logical place for a sentence in a paragraph. It may be that paragraph needs some organizational issues or has some organizational issues, and so they want you to know how to do that. They also want you to be able to provide a suitable conclusion for a paragraph or passage, not just cutting off an essay or even a paragraph and being, yep, I'm done, because you might not be done. You may not have a good conclusion. They want you to be able to also do that same thing for an introduction. You can't just start talking about something if you haven't built it up. And so that's something that you need to be able to do, and you should be at this point in your high school careers. Lastly, in the production of writing, determine the most logical place to divide a paragraph to achieve a stated goal. Again, I am going to be going over each one of these during this unit, and then delving a little bit deeper so that you can find success on the ACT when you take it. I apologize, I have not gotten to knowledge of language. That's another part of the ACT. So let's look at the skills that you need in order to get the best score on knowledge of language. You need to be able to revise clear, unclear, clumsy, or confusing words. You need to be able to delete redundant and wordy material. Guys, that word redundant, my daughter got tired of hearing that word because she had an English teacher that says that's redundant all of the time with her essays. And she realized that that was a pattern that she had. She would state what she was saying and then she would say it again in a different way, and that's just adding words to an essay without them really having a lot of meaning, and it becomes boring because it's repeating itself over and over. That's what redundant means. If you don't know what that means, you should by now. Revise an expression to make it conform to the style and tone used throughout the passage. You guys use expressions all the time in language, in your own everyday language. There are specific expressions that you will need to use, edit, in this case for the ACT, in order to maintain a specific style. Maybe you need to take that expression completely out. You will need to know how to do that for the ACT. Determine the need for conjunctions that create logical connections between clauses. Guys, sometimes we just throw a conjunction out there and it doesn't really make sense, but we want you to find the best conjunction that makes that logical connection. Choose the most appropriate word or phrase in terms of sentence content. Appropriate words and phrases are important when it comes to this ACT test. Every word that is used matters. And if it doesn't matter, then you need to learn how to throw it out, because if it's just there, what is that word that we said earlier? It becomes redundant, it becomes boring, it becomes, why do I want to even read the rest of this essay if it doesn't make sense, or it's just thrown in there for no real purpose. The last piece of knowledge of language is to question, it questions that assess your understanding of grammar and style rules in the context of a whole passage. So a lot of times this knowledge of, this particular one of piece of the knowledge of language would be it's going to ask you something about the entire passage, not just one piece. So it says, you can read the slide, but it says the ACT will never directly ask you about a grammar rule, but it will ask you about an entire passage. And so you're going to make a call, and it's all, those questions are always, if you're going to have one, it's going to be the very last question in the grand scheme of the entire essay. So when you finish a passage, you may see a knowledge of language that questions and allows you to assess your understanding of those grammar and style rules, and that will always come at the very end. So the last thing that we're going to talk about today are the types of essays that are going to be on your ACT test. They are always expository texts. Occasionally, there are personal narratives. There will never be poetry, drama, workplace documents, or procedural text. And they are written at the level of a late high school or early college student. Again, you want the best preparation for ACT English. If you've had really good teachers throughout your high school career, those teachers will have you peer reviewing, looking at the essays of other people that are in your classroom. That is essentially what you're doing with the ACT, is you are peer reviewing these other essays. So when you're looking at style, when you're looking at word choices, when you're looking at these things, and you've been doing that for the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years, then this English portion should come easy to you. Now, if your students, the students that are in your classroom, aren't writing at that upper level high school or early college level, then it may be that you start looking for those essays. And your teacher that's in your classroom should be able to help you find those. If they don't, know that you can do a Google search. I don't know if you know that there are lots of different Google search engines. One of them is called Google Scholar, and Google Scholar will help you find what they call scholarly articles. These are articles that have been written by college students or professionals, mostly in that upper college level. And yes, they're going to have words and terminology that you may not be familiar with, but guess what? That's going to happen in the ACT test as well. So if you get familiar with reading those and being able to notice nuances where the grammar is not where it needs to be, but I can just about guarantee they're going to be. But if you go in and you start reading those things now, then you're going to be more prepared for the English portion of the ACT. And guys, this English portion, because it is the very first test, if you get frustrated, you might as well throw the rest of the test away. So we need to keep you on your toes, ready, and knowing these things so it sets you up for success for the rest of the ACT. And that is all that I have for you today. Until next time, happy learning.